So the other night, I decided I was going to be one of those people who cooks dinner like a responsible adult. You know, the kind of person who makes a recipe, sets a timer, and somehow ends up with something edible instead of ordering pizza. I told myself, tonight I'm gonna impress my wife. Tonight, to show that I'm capable of functioning in the kitchen. That's where the first mistake happened. Thinking confidence alone can replace skill. You don't just wake up one day and become Gordon Ramsay. Wake up one day and discover that knives are sharp and pans are tricky, but I wasn't worried yet. I had a plan. Step 1. Step 2, I cook food. Step 3, don't burn the house down. Simple, right? I started off okay, chopping vegetables like a chef in a YouTube tutorial, feeling pretty proud of myself. And then the recipe said, heat the pan on high. I turned the burner on and immediately started hearing sounds that were alarming. There was this strange hissing noise, and then I saw smoke rising like the pan was holding a tiny barbecue party. And I thought, that's fine. That's probably normal. The pan is just warming up. But as it turns out, when you leave a pan unattended for more than 10 seconds, it begins plotting against you. I glanced over for just a second. Suddenly there was fire, not like a little flame, like call the fire department, fire. And in that moment, I realized cooking dinner isn't just about following directions. It's about survival instincts. You don't have at 8 p.m. The hooks kept coming when my wife walked in and saw me standing there like I was auditioning for a disaster movie. She asked, "You okay?" And I just looked at her and said, yeah, everything's fine maybe. Which is Nate speak for Cal 911 because I've ruined the kitchen and possibly the house. I grabbed a towel to put out the flames, but I forgot that towels are flammable. So now the towel was on fire too, which is exactly what the recipe didn't warn me about. And somewhere in the background, the smoke alarm had started its solo performance, wailing like it was judging me for every life decision I've ever made. After fumbling around, waving my arms and muttering, "It's just cooking. It's supposed to be fun," I finally managed to get the fire under control. By that point, the vegetables were charred beyond recognition, the pan was ruined. I was pretty sure I earned a spot in the kitchen hall of shame. My wife handed me a glass of wine, and I sat down, realizing that cooking dinner is like a video game where every level is rigged against you. I don't know why anyone makes it look easy on TV. The moral of the story, or at least the punchline, is that some things should remain untested. Some recipes are traps, some pans are enemies, and I will never again trust myself to be a responsible adult in the kitchen. So now, whenever I feel ambitious, I just order pizza and feel good about my survival instincts. Because there are battles in life you don't need to fight. And this kitchen fire was one of them. The moment I decided to cook dinner like a responsible adult, I felt this surge of confidence that was completely unearned. I was standing in my kitchen with a knife in one hand, a recipe on my phone in the other, and thinking, this is it. I'm finally going to prove I can be a functional human being. And that's the first mistake. The assumption that optimism alone can replace skill. You see, confidence in Nate Bargatze's comedy isn't just funny because it exists. It's funny because the audience can sense the impending doom before the character does. I was chopping vegetables, humming to myself and imagining how impressed my wife would be when she saw me transform our dinner from ordinary to gourmet. I didn't yet understand that ambition in the kitchen is dangerous. Overconfidence is a slow burning fire that usually ends in smoke alarms. The hook here is in that optimism, because viewers instantly relate to the feeling of trying something new with zero practical preparation, and they're already bracing themselves for what's coming next. What makes this opening so engaging is the way the mind narrates itself during overconfidence. You start rationalizing everything, exaggerating minor skills, and pretending that watching a 5-minute tutorial on YouTube qualifies you as a professional. Every small motion, slicing onions, dicing peppers, suddenly feels monumental. You describe it in a way that's calm, measured, almost serious, which heightens the humor, because the audience knows the stakes are way higher than you realize. The first chop of the knife doesn't just cut a carrot. It symbolizes the beginning of an ambitious experiment that you are hilariously unprepared for. And you play it straight because nothing is funnier than someone treating impending disaster as if it's routine. The anticipation builds naturally because the audience is allowed to imagine the possible consequences while you remain blissfully unaware. Confidence at this stage is a double-edged sword. On one side, it allows you to believe you're capable. On the other, it sets up the contrast that makes the eventual chaos even more absurd. You're describing a scenario that is mundane, but the hooks come from the internal monologue, the imagined grandeur of your success, the growing tension between expectation and reality. You picture yourself plating the food beautifully, sipping wine, maybe even receiving applause from your spouse. All of these imagined moments heighten the stakes because you've made success seem both inevitable and fragile. The audience knows exactly how quickly that illusion will crumble. What really lands this part of the story is the pacing. The slow build-up, the detailed description of your prep work, the confidence in small victories, all create a comedic rhythm. Each chopped vegetable, each stir of the sauce, is a beat in the narrative that increases tension. The humor is subtle but effective. You're not screaming about failure yet. You're calmly, methodically walking toward it. Taking ordinary events, dry observation and self-deprecation, and letting the audience see disaster creeping up one tiny step at a time. The hooks are layered. Your optimism, your exaggeration of skill, and the audience's anticipation all collide to make the very start of the story engaging, relatable, and funny. As I continued with my dinner experiment, the calm before disaster felt almost cinematic. Everything was going well, or at least it seemed that way. I was chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, occasionally glancing at the recipe like a responsible adult, imagining the final product as if it were already plated beautifully. That's the hook right there. The audience can see that nothing is as under control as it appears. The suspense builds because the mundane actions, turning on the stove, adding oil to the pan, tossing ingredients, are described in a way that makes them feel almost ritualistic. Each step is a prelude to some inevitable catastrophe. In Nate Bargatze's style, you keep it slow, dry, and observational, letting the audience lean forward because they know disaster is coming, even if the protagonist hasn't realized it yet. The tension escalates naturally as you narrate the subtle signs of trouble. Maybe the pan starts to smoke slightly. There's a small sizzle that seems louder than it should be. You shrug it off thinking, that's normal. That's part of the cooking process. But the audience knows that tiny hints like this are never normal. They're the comedic warning lights that something is about to go horribly wrong. The beauty of this stage is how ordinary it all is, yet every action feels monumental. Stirring a sauce becomes dramatic, adding spices becomes suspenseful, and flipping a vegetable feels like diffusing a bomb. The humor comes from exaggerating these simple actions in a calm, matter of fact tone, which makes the eventual chaos hit even harder. Your internal monologue during this calm phase is crucial for engagement. You're narrating your confidence, perhaps saying things like, I got this. This is fine. Maybe I'm a natural at this. The audience recognizes the classic overconfidence trap. They are already anticipating the fall. You can describe yourself moving smoothly, chopping vegetables with precision, glancing over at the timer and feeling that sense of victory, all while the smoke quietly begins to curl up from the pan. The subtle irony is what creates the hook, narrating a triumph that the audience knows is about to collapse in spectacular fashion. It's the slow, dry build-up that makes the chaos that follows not just funny, but inevitable. There's also the charm in how you interact with the tools of cooking. You handle the pan like it's a fragile instrument, check the lid multiple times, maybe even talk to the stove like it understands the stakes. The audience finds humor in these humanized interactions because they are exaggerations of normal cooking behavior. You're calm, measured, and yet the very actions you take are inadvertently preparing for disaster. The tension between your serene confidence and the potential for chaos keeps viewers engaged and invested in what happens next. Even small visual cues, like a glimmer of smoke or a slight flicker of flame, become comedic anchors. The audience's eyes are drawn to these details because they signal the turning point without anything being overtly dramatic yet. You can describe how the pan sizzles more aggressively, the aroma changes, and maybe your eyebrows knit together slightly. All while you tell yourself that everything is fine. The hook is in that tension, the calm before the storm, where every ordinary action is amplified by anticipation. The audience is waiting, laughing quietly, knowing exactly how wrong it's about to go. Then comes the part that really amplifies the comedy, the reactions of everyone else in the house. My wife walked in, perfectly calm, like she had no idea a minor apocalypse was happening in our kitchen. That contrast is gold. She looks at me, tilts her head slightly, and says something simple like, "Are you okay?" Which, in Nate Bargatze's style, is hilarious because it's understated, but hits like a punchline. The hook is in that juxtaposition. I'm standing there, smoke curling around me, waving a pan like a flag of surrender, and she's calm, collecting herself like none of this is even remotely dramatic. It's the perfect foil because the audience immediately recognizes themselves in her position. They've been the calm observer in a minor disaster while someone else flails. It's universally relatable. Her reaction sets the stage for observational comedy about family dynamics and human behavior. Maybe she offers advice in a slow, deliberate voice, or maybe she doesn't even acknowledge the flames at first, which makes my internal panic feel even more absurd. You begin narrating your thoughts. She's treating this like a normal Tuesday. Why is she not screaming? Why is she not helping? Does she not understand I am moments from burning the house down? The humor lies in the contrast between my frantic internal monologue and her calm, measured exterior. Every gesture she makes, whether it's a casual sip of water or a raised eyebrow, becomes a comedic anchor that enhances the tension and the absurdity of the situation. A child into the mix escalates the comedy even further. Kids have this brutally honest perspective. Maybe my daughter walks in, sees the smoke, and asks something like, Dade, why is the kitchen on fire? The simplicity and innocence of the question is a perfect punchline because it cuts through my overcomplicated panic. The audience laughs not only at my failure, but also at the human tendency to explain chaos in the most straightforward way possible. The child's honesty becomes a comedic device, reflecting the truth that we often complicate situations unnecessarily while others see them plainly. The timing of reactions is key. Nate's style thrives on pauses, subtle expressions, and deadpan observation. I might flail briefly with a towel. The flames lick the ceiling, and all the while she stands silently, hands on hips, waiting for me to figure it out. Tension builds because the audience is aware of the impending resolution, but the characters remain calm or oblivious, heightening the absurdity. The hook here is that the more calm the observers are, the funnier the chaos becomes. Every small glance, tilt of the head, or delayed reaction creates layers of comedy that feel natural yet expertly timed. Visual cues in storytelling enhance the humor too. You describe the smoke curling, the pan blackened, the charred vegetables, the towels dangerously close to flames, all while narrating your own helplessness. Each element is like a comedic prop, allowing the audience to picture the disaster clearly while laughing at my attempts to maintain composure. The family reactions turn ordinary failure into a rich, layered comedy scene where every glance, word, silence contributes to the hilarity. The hooks are everywhere: subtle judgment, innocent honesty, perfect timing. The stark contrast between calm and panic, making this part of the story both engaging and irresistibly funny. The funniest part of the story begins when I start to reflect on my own complete incompetence in the kitchen. By this point, the flames are under control, or at least contained, and the smoke alarm is wailing like it's judging every life decision I've ever made. That's where the humor intensifies. Instead of panicking, I start thinking about how ridiculous I must look. My hands are covered in oil, my hair is sticking up as if I've been electrocuted. I'm holding a burnt spatula like it's a weapon I've barely mastered. The hook here is that self-awareness in Nate. The audience sees the disaster unfolding, but the humor comes from the calm, dry narration of your own failures. You're not screaming or exaggerating, you're just quietly admitting, I tried, I failed spectacularly. As I narrate my fumbling attempts to salvage the dinner, every small action becomes funnier than the last. I might try to stir the charred vegetables, only to realize they've turned into something unrecognizable, and I mutter under my breath, well, that's fine. It's supposed to be crunchy. The audience connects with that because they've all had moments when a simple task spirals out of control. Your own attempt to rationalize it makes it even more absurd. Each minor failure compounds, building tension and ladders simultaneously. The hooks are in the detailed observations, the sound of sizzling, the lingering smoke, the charred aroma. It's all exaggerated, just enough to be relatable, but ridiculous enough to be funny. Family reactions continue to enhance the comedy. My wife, still calm, hands me a glass of wine as if everything is perfectly normal. My daughter gives a look that clearly says, "You are hopeless." The contrast between their composed demeanor and my complete disarray is comedic gold. The audience sees this duality, the chaos and the calm, and laughs because it mirrors real life family dynamics. Add hooks through these interactions because each glance, eyebrow raise, sarcastic comment serves as a comedic punctuation to my internal monologue of panic and disbelief. The humor deepens when I start reflecting on how overconfidence led me here. I think back to my initial excitement, imagining myself as a competent adult who could cook a gourmet meal. The irony is palpable. The very confidence that inspired me to step into the kitchen is what ensured my spectacular failure. The audience laughs because they can predict the outcome, They see the pattern, the inevitability. It makes the storytelling richer. In true Nate Bargatze fashion, the self-deprecation is understated yet sharp, letting viewers enjoy both the narrative and the relatability. Even the mundane details become comedic elements. The burned pan, the spilled oil, the scattered utensils, they're props in the story, each with a punchline waiting to be delivered. Describing my slow motion reactions to each new misstep keeps the audience hooked because they are witnessing a chain reaction of errors narrated with calm absurdity. The hooks here are layered: reflection on failure, family as the foil, ironic self-awareness, and observational humor, all combining to make the disaster not only funny but memorable. By the time I sit down and finally accept defeat, the humor has shifted from chaotic physical comedy to reflective, deadpan storytelling. The audience is laughing not just at the fire or the burnt food, but at the way I calmly narrate the absurdity of my ambition and failure. The hooks in this segment are subtle yet powerful. Self-deprecation, ironic reflection, and relatable overconfidence that leads to spectacular collapse, which keeps viewers engaged and laughing throughout. The final part of the story hits when you fully embrace the anticlimax, the moment where all pretense of control has vanished and you're left with nothing but the aftermath of your own disaster. After the fire is out, the vegetables are unrecognizable, the pan is ruined, and the smoke detector continues its solo performance. I sit back and quietly assess the situation. This reflection is where the humor lands hardest because it's delivered in that calm, observational Nate Bargatze tone. You're not panicking, you're just narrating a spectacular failure. The audience laughs because they've been along for the build up, the confidence, the slow escalation, the fire, and now they get to watch the protagonist fully realize the absurdity of it all. The hook is in the juxtaposition. A major disaster has occurred, but the delivery is understated, making it both relatable and hilarious. Part of what makes this moment so engaging is the inner monologue. I begin thinking about the ambition that led me here, recalling how I believed a few YouTube tutorials and some optimism were enough to make me a competent chef. That confidence feels foolish in hindsight, and that self-awareness creates a rich comedic moment. I describe my attempts to save dinner, the fumbling with utensils, and the half-hearted movements to salvage anything edible, all while acknowledging the sheer improbability of success. The audience laughs not at the chaos itself, but at the calm, almost resigned narration of it. The hooks are subtle yet effective, reflecting on overconfidence, embracing failure, narrating disaster in a way that amplifies humor through understatement. Family reactions continue to provide comedic contrast. My wife and daughter observe the aftermath, still calm and perfectly composed, which heightens the absurdity of my condition. The humor comes from my perspective. I see panic, disarray, and failure everywhere, but the family's reactions are minimal, almost judgmental in their subtlety. The audience connects with this because they've all experienced that dynamic, being the person flailing while others watch calmly, silently noting every misstep. The hooks in this segment rely on contrast, chaotic internal experience versus serene external observation, which keeps viewers both engaged and laughing. The humor also comes from the absurdity of trying to rationalize the situation. I narrate thoughts like, well, at least the fire is out. Maybe I can salvage something. Maybe we'll call it charred gourmet. These dry, understated comments highlight the ridiculousness of trying to impose logic on a completely illogical situation. The audience laughs because they recognize the futility. The tension between expectation and reality provides a perfect comedic payoff. Every small detail, the blackened pan, the lingering smoke, the scattered utensils, becomes a prop in this narrative, turning disaster into a carefully observed comedy scene. Finally, the story lands with a humorous surrender. Acknowledge my limitations, accept defeat, and reach for the one solution that guarantees safety, sanity, and peace: ordering pizza. This anticlimactic resolution is classic Nate Bargatze, where the punchline is not a dramatic disaster, but a calm, relatable choice after a series of misadventures. The hooks are layer-dyed self-deprecation, understated reflection, family as a comedic foil, and the universal recognition that some battles are simply not worth fighting. The audience is left laughing at both the chaos and the protagonist's quiet acceptance, which makes this ending simultaneously satisfying, relatable, and hilarious. That's when I realized some things in life are better left untested, like my ability to cook dinner. You can watch all the tutorials, read all the recipes, and still end up with smoke, fire, a pan that's never going to forgive you. So now, whenever I feel ambitious, I just order pizza and call it a night. Because some battles, like trying to be a gourmet chef in your own kitchen, aren't worth fighting. And honestly, the only thing I mastered that night was how to survive a culinary disaster with a sense of humor intact.